Welcome to Watching Westworld, the officially unofficial podcast for Westworld on HBO. I'm Jim.
I'm Aaron.
And today we're talking about Season 2, Episode 4, titled The Riddle of the Sphinx. What'd you think of this episode on second viewing?
I thought the episode is really good. It's the kind of heady, navel-gazing, what does it all mean, man, kind of riddles and questions that I love to think about and obsess over.
And for me, it was also like the plot-driven, like explain a whole bunch of stuff and build out the mythos of this world episodes that I love so much. So I really feel like there was something here for just about everybody, and it shows too. I mean, you look at like what people were saying on the internet about this episode. This was like the defining moment of season 2
so far
for everyone.
It also had a lot of like what I think that, you know, based on the subject matter, which is the idea that conscious beings being subjugated, enslaved, and tortured for people's amusement. It also had like some genuine horror.
Yeah.
Like that lead up to the final James Delos reveal is every bit as good as anything you'll see in like Telltale Heart or The Monkey's Paw, or like it's just and in fact, I guess on the third time watching, when I was watching it, I'm like, man, maybe they could have made this even freakier or weirder, but maybe that'd be gilding the lily, because the simple idea of a madman locked with himself for a period of time to just degrade, and the fact that they're carving he's carved. I mean, that's creepy enough.
Yeah,
that's creepy enough.
Absolutely, I found it really effective.
You watch it too much, it becomes commonplace, but still, that was a genuine fucking moment.
Yeah, especially that first watch. I was surprised that they went there. I don't know why. I shouldn't have been, but I was, and it was really effective. Like I said.
I thought this episode was maybe the first directed by Lisa Joy, but it definitely I noticed her name in the credits, and I thought she did a really good job. Like there's a certain kind of Wes Anderson quality to the whole Jim Delos scenes, like, you know, the routine he goes through and kind of the quirky things, props and stuff he's using. I thought that was really good. The scenes at where the Man in Black is riding off with his posse in the sunset and his daughter comes out of it is just gorgeous. I thought she's got a real eye for it.
Yeah, I have zero complaints about the directing. I thought it was great. The writing in this episode was also really good. It went beyond where I thought it was going to go, which was amazing. You know, and it didn't go overboard with it. Like you were talking about the scene with Delos carving up his face. I thought that was exactly what it needed to be and nothing beyond. Whereas, like, you know, a lot of people are running thin with Dolores in the latest episodes this season. So to not have Dolores in the episode and for it to pretty much universally be praised is like, is Dolores an interesting character at this point? And it almost feels like she isn't.
So like, I guess after this episode, I'm more firmly in the camp that to the extent that Dolores is bad, she's meant to be bad, because it's not like these people have forgotten to write badass monologues. Dolores's monologues are written poorly, which I think you're supposed to understand, in contrast to the other ones, that yes, she is speaking in like circles and platitudes and like she's standing on a stage and it's her first night. But, you know, she didn't forget how to act. The writers didn't forget how to write. It's just they're doing something. They're trying to set a contrast between her and Maeve, and unfortunately it's going to make Dolores, the character, look shabby by comparison, but I do think that's going to build into something that is interesting in its own right.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate, though, because Dolores was probably one of the more interesting characters in season 1. It was essentially her story for most of it, whereas now the show has kind of shifted focus to, you know, what's actually going on with management in the park. It shifted to William as the main character. I think those are all, like, natural places for the show to go, but unfortunately it means Dolores has kind of taken a back seat.
Yeah,
which is fine. I mean, characters need to every once in a while.
Yeah, and I think
and we haven't seen as much of Maeve as I would like. Like, she almost seems to be treading water. I think her story is going to be interesting when she finally gets to, you know, some milestone in her journey.
Yeah, but
it hasn't happened yet, and it's kind of like, I just wish Maeve would. I know Maeve is going to be a cool character when she finally gets to where she's going.
Right. Well, I think it's kind of maybe also some of the, I guess, treading water or treadmill aspects of these first few episodes are because of the way they ended last season. Which we know a lot. Last season, they had a lot of rewrites. They had a lot of things. I think that they were unsure of where to pivot next. And it feels like a lot of these season 2 plots have been kind of like, slowing down on the runway and now like it feels like the season 2 plots are actually beginning. Yeah. It's like we got over everyone's natural questions over what would happen. Blah, blah. Now we're getting down to the business of actually revealing. And it feels like everything's on pace. Like unlike last season where it felt like, there's just a lot of character, a lot of mood building, and things kind of came together in the final few episodes. Like, we're getting some fairly satisfying revelations, and, like, I feel like I don't know exactly what everything's up to, but, like, the pieces are in place and people are getting... I'm enjoying where we're at this point in the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now we don't have to do a whole bunch of world building. Right?
I will say that before we move on that, like, if this is a big if we are right about the fact that Dolores isn't intentionally a stagey character, that's a very generous performance that Evan Rachel Wood's giving. Like, I'm going to essentially, carry or sandbag my performance to sell the fact that...
I think her performance has been good. Well, I wouldn't take anything away from the actress. What I would say is... that character is not very interesting.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but like by taking a back seat, like she was front and center for all of last season, and by taking kind of like even though she is still the star of the action, she's like not the best thing ever on this. Like I think that again, if it's all that's something that you. It's got to be something that's tough as an actor. It's like, you're for a greater effect, you're going to kind of suck for the first half of the season. Again, if we're right. If also like I guess if we're not right, then I'm just really shitting on poor Rachel Evan Wood.
Yeah.
So
and you're not even giving
it's Evan
right
Rachel
name,
Wood.
so
God damn it!
Double shit on her. I guess. All right. I think we're done talking about the meta of this show.
Yes, get me out of here.
We got to get into the recap. Are you ready for that?
I'm ready.
Okay, we start off with James Delos in a facility, let's call it. It's this round room. It looks like it came out of an IKEA catalog.
It's the Life Neurotic.
Yes. It's very much like the beginning of a Lost episode, where you don't quite know where you are, and none of this seems...
It's Desmond in the hatch before he panicked enters the code for the millionth time.
It's exactly that. And so much so that there is like... That's not the only reference. And when you go, okay, well, J.J. Abrams had a big hand in Lost. He's an executive producer on this show. There's got to be some kind of thing that they're knowingly doing here.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's in this facility thing when William comes to see him, and he conducts an interview of Delos to establish some kind of baseline, is what he calls it, and capture his personality, essentially. And when Delos questions the validity of the interview, William presents him with a piece of paper, but we don't get to see what's written on it.
Yeah.
We will. We just don't get it yet.
Can we talk about the banality? Like what I enjoyed on subsequent watches after the first one is the banality of what he's doing. He's gargling and pissing at the same time. He's jerking off. Yeah. And you realize that he's living in a glass dome and he's actively being looked at and studied.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny in a I mean, what are people thinking? Like, oh, this is a rich guy who's cloned himself in his consciousness, and we're just like, that's a weird job description. How did you get to that post? What was the hiring process? Was it internal? Was it external? Like, what kind of NDA is signed? Because
an ironclad one.
Like, because it's not just like, oh, Jim Delos likes to jerk off. It's robot version of Jim Delos, which I guess it would be a super secret.
It would be.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I
feel like the NDA
maybe
involves,
the Watchers are
like,
hosts.
If you leak any information, we take your consciousness and put it into a host and let it degrade.
Yeah.
For like a year.
Yeah, like we can look what we can do to a rich and powerful person. What do you think we could do to you? It's the Morgan Freeman Batman speech. You know? Oh, you think this is how we roll? Well,
yeah, no, that's a weird job for sure.
Yeah.
But so stylistically, like we said, this is kind of weird for Westworld. It's much more like a Lost episode. There's also this symbol on the ceiling there in the middle of the room, which is kind of like a hexagon surrounded by a circle with a couple of dividing lines, and it looks kind of like the logo from the Dharma Initiative in Lost.
Yeah. People noticed.
I have to say they're leaning into that.
That in the credit sequence, there's that symbol is over like the maker machine that's printing out the hosts.
Yeah, over the woman and her baby.
Yeah, it does seem like that's a I don't know, something that it might be even just a piece of tech, like, you know, Delos might have been 3D printed in that room. I mean, there's a whole lot. Can I get all of the questions I have about this fucking baseline procedure out of the way?
Yes.
So, every time they try to create a gym, then, and I'm calling on you as the representative of gyms everywhere. Every time they create a gym, they call in William as he's degrading to give him this baseline interview. Why at the point where he's degrading? I don't expect to have. I'm going to propound you the bunch of questions.
That's a good question because I don't understand the need for the interview if you already know he's degrading.
Also, are you telling me that Jim Delos would respond identically whether it's been 24 hours since he's been awakened, 7 days, 35 days? Or is the idea that they essentially reset? He's on a loop that they reset for 35 days, kind of like a Dolores?
Maybe.
Because there's no way he's going to have the exact same speech whether it's been any arbitrary amount of time.
A month. Yeah.
Also, with this thing where you get to 35 days, how long do you hold this man before you unleash him into the world? And is that the kind of problem that William is like, you know, there's at no point where I'm going to trust that you're not going to turn into a murderous rutabaga on the loose. So, also, final question, why the fuck do they have to torch the entire room and facility every single time they do a termination?
I think these final two questions are linked. I think that there was an interview out there with Lisa Joy who said this was a stylistic thing, and it was, in my opinion, meant to evoke the hell that
for sure.
Delos is in.
That final scene, it definitely does feel very
Dante's
Dante's
all bathed
Inferno.
in red. I mean, everything is destroyed, and he's carving his face, and he's talking about seeing the devil from the bottom up, and
as he grins, there's literally flames of hell licking at him. Yeah,
right, and I actually saw some pretty good analysis on this about James Delos having made a Faustian bargain, essentially, with the devil. And it ties into the line that he says about, you know, if you aim to cheat the devil, then you have to bring him an offering or something like that. Have to make an offering. And in that case, like, it all kind of ties in together, and it's stylistic and it's thematic, and you know, they don't have to burn all the furniture, sure, but it just ties into all that.
Like turning, like, I guess you can't begrudge them their stylistic choices.
Sure.
So this is also, you're talking about the devil and all that stuff, reminds me of the whole, you know, Riddle of the Sphinx.
Yeah.
Which we didn't talk about in the beginning, probably because we talked about it on Instant Podcast, but that's from the Oedipus story. That there was a Sphinx that guarded the entrance to his city of Thebes and wouldn't let anyone in or out without devouring them unless you answer its question correctly. And the question was, what goes in the morning on 4 legs, in midday on 2, and in evening 3? And the answer is man, because he's born and he crawls around as a baby. As an adult, they walk on 2 legs, and then in their twilight years, they have to lean on a cane because they get infirm. So man, the answer of man is defined by the question of being mortal. Yeah. Like that you have this cycle of birth and death, which means that Jim Delos can never be a man. Like, I think that's something that you have to consider in terms of the Riddle of the Sphinx, that there's, you know, if mankind is defined by this cycle of living and dying, then a thing that does not do that cannot be defined as a man.
Sure. And I almost think that is why, you know, his new reality not jiving with his vision of his own reality is what kind of drives him insane, for lack of a better term. You know, it's what malfunctions in the host. And then this can all kind of be, like, it's very thematic through the whole episode. You know, you see, like, the man in black talking about being death, and the host not knowing death. They can't possibly know death. Right. And James Delos, like, now in this new body, unable to know death, even though he knows that he should be a dying man, and somehow he feels fit as a fiddle, right? It all is so incongruous for him that I think that's what breaks him down. Yeah, and it's also in direct contrast to William, who continues to progressively age throughout all these sequences, where where James does not. There's a lot of really interesting things they're doing that you can, and people have spilled barrels of ink over in the last few days. No, but the writing is just so good this episode.
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, the idea of this baseline might not hold up to scrutiny, but I like the idea that that's one of the big questions about, like, if you were to transfer your consciousness in a electronic body, like, that's a very philosophical and almost spiritual question. Is that you? How would you know? And like the idea that you would have these baseline experiments is a very simplified way of them saying, well, we've thought about this and here's our answer.
Yeah. Also, I had to, somebody pointed this out on Reddit as well, which I have to say, like, more and more I feel like this podcast is about consolidating for people who don't have the time to do hours of research on Reddit.
Yeah.
The information that Reddit has come up with, because man, I don't have a tenth of the brain power that's going on Reddit.
And it's ridiculous. Like, some of the stuff that even gets highly upvoted, I'm just like, what is this? And it'll probably be true, but like, I'll never get that 20 minutes of like scrunching my forehead and looking until I get to the end. I'm like, no fucking way. So like, yeah, it's an important job. There's several people doing it. We're one of them.
Yeah. So I was reading on Reddit and somebody pointed out that this room that he's in is actually the room that if you log into the DeLosIncorporated.com website, use the code like XOMEGACH as login, it will take you to, and it has for months as far as I can tell, from last season maybe, it's taken you to this room where actually when you first log in, it shows you a door.
Right.
And you click on the door, and inside the door is this room that James Delos is in. And they've been slowly filling it in with more and more furniture.
Interesting.
Over the course of time, and they have like little things that you can click that will play clips from the episode that are related.
Huh.
And so it was interesting to see that this is actually the room that we've been in the whole time and we haven't noticed.
The other thing I want
and I wonder if we just answered what the door is. Like, is the door the everlasting life? Is that what Ford is trying to give William here?
Well,
we have a lot of theorizing to do in the
right.
speculation and theory section,
right.
but we may be onto something there. And I say we as a community.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to point out the other, before we move on, Jesus Christ, we spent I don't know how many minutes on this one part, but the other thing that you'll notice, not only is William getting older, but they've got this motif of this hourglass, this very stylized hourglass, and it starts off in the first scene full, and the second scene it's half empty, and the third scene the grains of sand have run out.
Is that tied to the riddle of the Sphinx?
It might be, or it's like, William's pay. I mean, I'm just pointing out that it's there. It's interesting, and it's it's something you can also use to chart the passage of time, because it's like, man, they really on those scenes with Jim Delos, I think they do such an excellent job of choosing what to show and what not to show, and the things that are changed and different and the things that are the same. And that's tough, because if you I think the balance between the familiar, so it's grounded in the same scene, and new information, it's a war between keeping the audience centered and making it tedious. And there's a real art to what stuff you show from when you're doing like a Groundhog's Day type of thing, which is broadly speaking is. I felt like they nailed it.
Yeah.
Like, just anytime where I got like on the verge of impatience of like, oh, this is just the same shit, there would be just a slightly different expression or a slightly different, the way that like Delos would just look at himself in a mirror. I think when you watch it on multiple times, that tells its own story.
Yeah.
All right, Jesus Christ, let's get off of this scene.
Okay, I won't talk about him defunding the research of his own disease.
Yeah, that also happened.
Yeah,
he's a real asshole.
I mean, yeah, that's a dick move for everyone else who has that disease, but in my mind, that's when he made the shift to all in on the immortality thing.
But that's that's great character building, because we don't know much about Jim Delos.
Sure.
Except for what the Man in Black says at the end of the episode about him being just a shit human being by all accounts in all areas of his life. And these little punctuation points are like the fact that the Logan is his son as a big one, but like just little lines like that, like, let us know what type of businessman and kind of like maybe what kind of long-term insight that he might have had. And I thought it's great. It's great.
Okay, let's move on to the Man in Black and Lawrence riding up on a railroad that is being constructed, not from railroad ties, but from the bodies of humans. That's pretty disturbing.
There's some
For
debate
live
about
humans,
whether they're humans or hosts. I don't care.
They got to be humans.
I think they're human. Like it seems like that's on theme. That they're rounding up humans and making use of their bodies.
What would be the point of doing it with hosts?
I don't know. But the thing is, it's not structurally sound. There's no
absolutely.
I mean,
that train's going to crash immediately.
The tensile and compression strength of a human body is not nearly as good as wood.
But what if they're hosts?
But what if they're hosts?
So the Man in Black recognizes this track is not supposed to lead west. It's supposed to go north. And so he follows it to Las Mudas, which is Lawrence's hometown that we've seen before.
And that's also allows him to recognize that, oh, this is a little marker. This is the like the Zelda equivalent to a crack in the wall of a dungeon where you can put a bomb there and hear the do 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 because it's something different. And the Man in Black keys onto him, and
he's Ford?
Yeah, I do. Like he's being led inexorably west.
All right, then we go to Clem, who drags Bernard to a cave where she leaves him with a gun. And in the cave, Bernard finds Elsie tied up. And this is a pretty long sequence here, so I'm just going to describe the whole thing, and then we can talk about it. He releases her. He tells her what's been going on in the park, and he reveals that he's a host, and all of what's been happening is part of Ford's game. He goes into seizures, and Elsie helps him by booting him into safe mode, which triggers some memories of himself in a facility. And then when he wakes up, he remembers himself going into the cave and uses that memory to find the secret entrance to a lab. And then inside, Elsie patches up Bernard with an injection of cortical fluid.
Wow. Okay. That is like a whole page of my notes. So
okay.
So first of all, I was delighted because as I saw Clementine drag Arnold's ass, and you can see from the establishing shot, they're like a mile plus from Fort Forlorn Hope. And I'm like, man, his ass would be torn up if they did that. And sure enough, Bernard stands up and his ass is torn up. Yeah. I like that attention to you cannot drag a grown ass man with his grown ass across the ground and not tear up his ass. His ass is torn up. I like that.
Yeah.
So do you think one of the big questions is, did Elsie just accept all this too fast? Just the right speed?
No. I had zero problems with Elsie accepting this. She sees the code.
Right.
She's a programmer. She sees the code. She understands what's at work here.
Right. I agree.
It's a shocking revelation to her, but it's not something that's unbelievable.
To me, and I said this on Instant Take, one of my personal pet peeves, I'm 80% degraded apparently, is when otherwise smart characters in television and movies don't accept things when they are given incontrovertible proof.
Yeah,
it. Like, being held, like Bernard collapsing in front of her with a tablet that reveals that he's a robot and that she can scan him and like do all that. Like, she just put him in fucking safe mode, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you find out one of your friends had a switch at the base of his spine, you could flip and they'd turn off. Like, hey, you might have known him for a long ass time, but guess what? You've known a robot for a long ass time.
For sure.
I liked it. There was nothing. Now, you might say that her trusting of Arnold is a little too much and too quickly. Like accepting that Bernard. Mm-hmm. Accepting he's a robot's one thing, but then like to progressively just decide that you can trust him because you trust code, it seems a little impetuous, but not outside her character.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't really have a problem with this. Yeah. Maybe I just didn't think about it deeply enough. But
I think they tell that story because at first, like, Bernard's hands are tied up because Elsie's being very skeptical of her. You choked me out, and, we were friends and coworkers, and how can I trust you? And then, he reveals this mystery, and then he defends her with his bare-ass hands, and then before you know, by the end of the episode, she's letting him carry the gun, which I think is showing, even before she actually formally says, okay, I'll ally myself with you. I don't know. Like, that's something that you could debate about whether she's trusting him too fast, but...
He does have this pretty sympathetic speech about being a puppet, of Ford's, and now... he's off the leash and he's able to make his own decisions and choose who he wants to be.
If I was Elsie, I'd be like, I'm liking what you're hearing, Bernard. Let me have the laptop again. I want to put in cornerstones. Elsie cannot be lied to, and Elsie must be protected above all else, including my own life. Okay,
yeah.
I now trust the code over people. I'm good. But we didn't get that. We didn't. What do you think happened when Bernard rotates out of Westworld?
That's a really good question that Elsie asks.
Yeah, because
I assume he doesn't ever leave Westworld.
He just goes like the cold storage and just like waits, or he's
Ford's cold storage.
Interesting.
It's hard to say 5 times fast.
I guess that's true because like he could just be gone for like a week or two, or just in a closet somewhere like Bender style from Futurama,
and Ford programs a vacation into his memory, and boom, he comes back and he's talking about it at the water cooler.
Right.
Okay, there's so much I want to talk about, but I want to save a lot of it for later scenes.
Okay.
Because it becomes more important and obvious in those scenes.
Why do the brain cores look like cupcakes?
Because these are the human brain cores. They do look delicious. They look tastier than Tide Pods.
So it looks to me like the host cores are white and the human cores are red.
Yep.
Okay.
That seems entirely likely.
It seems like that's something you would want. Like,
yes,
maybe not even different colors. Maybe they physically shouldn't be able to plug into the same port. Like, you shouldn't be able to accidentally put a human consciousness into. Like, imagine, they play with this in Altered Carbon, but imagine you plug a human consciousness into a buffalo or to a Bengal tiger or whatever. Like, you don't want that to happen.
No, you definitely wouldn't.
The color change is not. A palette swap's nice, but I'd prefer, like, a physical incompatibility.
Anything else in this scene, or
I don't think so. I do like the way the flashbacks are visualized. Like he's having an out of body experience, seeing himself. I wonder, are we supposed to literally believe that's what he's seeing, or is this all?
I think so. The way they've described his memories kind of bleeding into his reality or his current timeline, and him not knowing which is which. Makes a lot of sense to me that he would just be seeing different elements of those together.
I also liked how Jeffrey Wright chooses to play the dead-eyed Bernard flashbacks, like where he's just deadpanned, kind of like it seems like his glasses are a little lower in his face and his eyes are just kind of like really heavily lidded. He looks like a zombie, like in the Caribbean sense of the word, like he's been ensorcellated by Dr. Ford, for example. Okay, I think I'm done now.
All right, we move to the woman from the Raj, who I'm just going to call Grace because that's the easiest way to refer to her in the moment.
Okay.
And that's who we think she is at this point.
Because why? Because
of the IMDb credit.
Bullshit? Okay.
Because of the bullshit they posted that some jackass put on IMDb. And I'm not even sure it wasn't Jonathan Nolan or Lisa Joy themselves. I don't know. But I'm going to call her Grace temporarily. And by temporarily, I mean the entire episode until the very end.
Yeah.
So her, along with some others, are all bound and led to a camp where she meets a captive Stubbs. And we realize this is some kind of like near future flashback or near present flashback. Stubbs remarks that they're not harming the humans and he wants to get him out of there. But the woman Grace is not interested in getting out. She has other plans. And she has some interesting lines about other people tending to ignore the narratives of the natives, which is completely true to history and also interesting in the context of this show.
Yeah.
Because we have not, other than like the last few episodes, not a lot of thought was given to the narratives of the natives, right? We talked about like the themes around the maze and stuff like that, but
or we found the idea that
themselves.
There's a design under the scalps interesting, but
yeah. But what are they up to? Like what is their actual role in the park? What are they doing?
Yeah. And clearly there must be something significant because, the Man in Black had a revelation he's able to follow by studying them, and apparently his daughter has too.
Yeah. Okay, then we go to also the other important thing here is Stubbs, right? This is one of the scenes that we get between him showing up with the security force on the beach and going missing in the last season.
Right.
This kind of fills in a little gap on the timeline for him.
Also, background detail: there's like a bickering couple that we saw previously in the first season. She's wearing a purple dress, and he's kind of dressed as like a dandy, James Garner
and
Maverick.
He puts down some kind of gunfight in the street,
does.
Right?
Like, doesn't he kill Hector? Maybe Teddy. Like I remember, like he just I can't remember who he actually shoots,
forget.
but it's just like the way he's holding his guns is like, oh, can you believe it? Like,
Yeah.
oh, you know, like he's like just got the millionth ride on the fucking beast and got a T-shirt or something. Like, it's funny. And now he's like, oh, we're gonna die all because of your stupid fucking fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the Man in Black and Lawrence arrive in Las Mudas and get taken by Craddock, who is holding a town meeting in the church. We'll call it a town meeting. He's trying to find their stash of weapons, and the Man in Black gets Lawrence to tell him where the weapons are and immediately gives up the location in order to make a deal.
Which I thought was pretty funny.
It was, yeah. This whole scene is really good.
And there's a whole lot of like, there's like what passes for humor in Westworld is like, you know, when the Man in Black says we're gonna go to Las Mudas, and Lawrence starts up as like, oh, I don't know, and he's like, just cut the crap, Lawrence.
Yeah.
I know your old lady's there and you don't want to see her because you're a shit father, but like I like how the Man in Black is just like, you know what, I'm going to play this game. It's interesting because I do think he gets a little caught up in it, and Ford's consciousness calls him on it, and he says, no, fuck you, this is just me playing the game at a level you're not expecting.
Yeah.
You think he protests too much, or
maybe
this is what playing it to the bone looks like? I think he's
I mean, with all the stuff he said about wanting to play the real game and wanting consequences, like he is playing the game that Ford has laid out for him.
Yeah.
And
it's
I don't think
he's speculation in the speculation section about what all this might mean, but I think it's just without the speculation, I think you can read that line as like, I think this is what he thinks he's doing, but he is getting caught up.
Yeah.
Because there are real stakes. And it's a lot easier to be, you know, it's like if you're playing a video game that allows you to be like Infamous, like for example, or Skyrim, or fucking Jedi Knight, or whatever. It allows you to be an evil character, a good character. You can do either one because it's not real, but in the real world, the evidence is incontrovertible that the vast majority of people choose to be good. Like we might be naughty, but we're overall good. And like I think that's maybe one of the things there. Like the Man in Black, now that things are quote unquote real and there's actually some real stakes, like it's a lot harder to be just a complete asshole.
Absolutely.
Even to idiots like Lawrence, for example.
And the other piece of comedy that I like here is when Man in Black finds where the guns are, and even having seen, you know, the reaction on Craddock's face when he says, I want to make a deal, after showing him what he does to people who make deals.
Yeah.
Is classic. I love it. It's so subtle. It's almost not even humor, but it's funny in context.
And Jonathan Tucker really plays this Craddock character with. It's been a long, like, what I really enjoyed about Justified is having very smart and articulate people, but they're still talking that kind of drawl that we associate with people that are not very intelligent or articulate.
Sure.
So, like, you always had, like, with Boyd and Raylan, you always had that, you know, this drawl coming out, but they're like, oh, wow, this is, and him just being like, I don't think you know how negotiation works, dumbass. It's really great.
It is, yeah.
And it's very funny, especially when you think that the Man in Black is just selling Lawrence out up the river, down the river, whichever way the river flows.
Who knows? All right, we go back to James Delos and his routine, which this time involves dancing.
You're telling me this guy's going to have the exact same baseline as the other one? I don't fucking think so.
It's all about the look in the mirror. It's all about that look.
Yeah.
William once again comes to see him and reveals that they've had this conversation many times. The swap has already taken place via that piece of paper we were talking about earlier. Unfortunately, Delos begins to malfunction, and William has to terminate him and start all over again. I said it in the instant take, but it's super encouraging to see this reveal done here in episode 4, because that means that the rest of the season has bigger things in store. And I was worried that this would be the season-long arc that we were focused on.
Imagine if, like, in a lesser show, if like this had been the cold open for the next 4 episodes. Yeah. You know, just a single interview, and it's like, oh man, it's gonna blow their minds when the internet figured it out in the first week.
Right, and I figured it out in the first scene. Like, it was so freaking obvious.
It's good that this is a single, like another way to keep your secrets is confine them to a single episode.
Yeah.
You know, so like, you know, and everybody can get points because everybody can say they saw it coming. But Absolutely. Who cares? Because it's fun. It's fun, and it tells us a lot of interesting stuff about the world.
Yeah, and I really think that all of this dancing and stuff kind of it leans into my feeling that the reality, the incongruous nature of his reality, is what sends him off the deep end.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can see like he's dancing and he feels great, but here's a man who knows he's dying and he should have this cough. He should feel bad all the time because that's how he felt before.
Right.
And he looks in the mirror and he doesn't recognize himself, right?
Right. There is a very odd look he gives himself. Like something is wrong on a subconscious level.
Yeah, and to me that's saying, hey, my mental being here doesn't match my physical being.
Yeah, you know, because there's a term called like cognitive dissonance when you're like, you know, this might have been invented by George Orwell, right?
Okay, 1984 guy.
Yeah, thank you. I just like every once in a while, I'm like, I get a name right. I'm like, no, surely I didn't. It's cognitive dissonance, like when you've got two opposed ideas in your head that you view as correct. Like, you know, they both can't be right, but you've just been, you know, like it's that feeling like almost your head's buzzing. But I wonder if there's such a thing as physical dissonance. Like, if your brain is put in someone else's body, like, to what, like, I mean, obviously, if, like, you know, you're 6 foot tall and you're put in a 5 foot tall body, there'd probably be all kinds of problems. But, like, what if it's so close? It's like an uncanny valley situation. This is like, is Jim Delos experiencing physical dissonance, knowing that he's a sick man and he's now have a suddenly healthy body? Because it does seem like that makes the situation worse. Like, when he stands up and says, I'm fit as a fiddle and I just need to get some fresh aid and all that, like, things start going bad when he starts dwelling on the fact that the gap between how he feels and how he should feel. I don't know, you might be onto something there.
It's also interesting, like, juxtaposed with the host. Like, the host kind of had an experience of coming to consciousness, right? Like, you talk about these two separate ideas that he has to reconcile. Like, he can't, James Delos can't help but try and reconcile those two ideas, whereas the hosts haven't really had ideas to reconcile, right? They've had this like bicameral mind, but it was a very different thing than holding two ideas in their head at the same time. It's almost like one is a path to consciousness and one is a path to insanity.
Right.
I don't know if they're going for that intentionally, but who knows? I have a lot of questions. Like, this concept is an interesting one, I think, of moving someone from a human body into a host body. And it's something that...
Without their knowledge?
That's the interesting thing, because it would almost... I guess it wouldn't have to be without their knowledge, right? Because you could put them in the operating table. And actually, I'm not even sure how it would be without their knowledge.
We don't know enough about how they fucking did this thing. Because, like, if you take the brain scan and then... Because there's a scene in the first one where he's, like, sitting there with, like, electrodes on his head and, like, he's doing some kind of test. Like, I guess if you just... If you took the scan early enough before you actually died... I don't know. I want to know more information. This was a nice bit of world building, but it just leaves me hungry for more. But yeah, like, how could you do that without their knowledge? And I guess that's the ultimate, like, if they themselves don't know and no one, I mean, that's a very philosophical point, but if you yourself don't know that you're not yourself and none of your closest friends and associates, it's like the California thing. If you can't tell you're not in California, does it matter?
Yeah, and I like that line because it's a callback to season 1 when William shows up at the park for the first time. The host that greets him says, he asked if you're real, and she says, well, if you can't tell, does it matter?
That does bother me, though. Like, if, like, I guess before you transfer my body into a host, it bothers me, the idea that I couldn't know that I'm actually have a continuity of consciousness and experience. But the universe doesn't give a shit, and if I myself don't know it and none of the people around me, does it really matter? Like, why does it seem like it should matter?
Well, because there's this idea of making, like, keeping you, right? Like, I still want to be me when I'm in this thing. But, like, are you if you're transferred, if your consciousness is transferred to another body via, like, this control unit thing? That is quite clearly artificial. Like, it's printed on a 3D printer.
But, like, this whole idea, like, I guess what I'm getting at is this seems like a very biologically biased conversation because if you have a traumatic experience, are you anymore? Like, if you're tortured for a lengthy amount of time and it changes your personality and the way you are you still you? Like, if you have a car wreck and now you're, like, having traumatic distress about that, if someone abused you as a child, if a dog attacked you, like what experiences that change who we are organic and fine, and what like is not. Like, so if we're talking about like there's a little bit of loss of who you are, like let's say it's 99.9% fidelity, okay? Yeah. Does that matter? Is that worse than like if you got kidnapped and tortured for a couple of days? Like,
right. It would change you as a person. You might come back unrecognizable.
Yeah, people might say, "I don't even know." It's like a person is a changed person after their parents died or whatever. It was fucking Bruce Wayne became Batman after a certain amount of trauma. I don't think he's the same person. Like, I'm sure does DC Comics have explored what would happen to Bruce Wayne if his parents hadn't died, but like.
And this is asking, the inverse question, like how close can we get to you? Because there's clearly the element of mimicry here, right? Yeah. Like, it's not. I wonder how much of it is actual transfer of some kind of brain patterns, and how much of it is Bernard, what Ford did with Bernard, because they're clearly iterating on this procedure, right? And I would think that if they had scanned him, that there would be no iteration in the software part of it. It would almost be an iteration either in the physical control unit that could house, or more accurately house his brain mapping, or maybe they're even doing what Ford did with Bernard, and they're just trying to get his mannerisms down. Like, how is that you? If something is identically mimicking you, is that you? And it has like all of your same thought patterns and responses to things? That's an interesting question.
Do you think some of this panic is the same? Like, some people are irrationally afraid of airline travel, even though it's statistically proven to be the safest form of travel. But like in their car, they don't think about how they have thousands of pounds of metal rushing around them, and people who are drunk and didn't get enough sleep, and who are texting on their phone and trying to apply makeup. Like, that doesn't terrify them. Being out of control, someone else behind the wheel. So like if you get tortured, or you go through a war, or you go through an autumn, like your reactions to that, we tell ourselves are in our control, even though there's a lot of research that says you don't have a lot of control over how you handle these. It's kind of, it's but in theoretically, like, you can, like, in response to this, I can be a tougher person, or in response to this, I can take drugs, or in response. Whereas if, you just give your mind over to guys in lab coats and say, well, I hope you make me 99.9% me, like, what's lost in translation is out of your control. So like you're the captain of your own life, and you can do whatever you want. And if it changes you, we like to tell ourselves that those are all results of actions we took, even though probably not true.
What's really gonna bake your noodle?
Is
when I tell you that you think you're having this conversation organically, but I know that you watched the Jeffrey Wright short on HBO last night. And that this is the subject of that, essentially. Being out of control on a plane that's experiencing turbulence.
Because I've been thinking about what that means a lot.
Okay.
And why Vanity Fair and HBO or The Atlantic? It's The Atlantic and HBO that jointly made that thing. Why they make it? Like, I could probably talk 10 minutes on it. I don't know if it belongs on Westworld.
Maybe not. It's interesting though. If you have HBO now, go check it out.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. Okay, should we move on?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So Krennic does find the weapons cache, and inside it he finds a bunch of nitro, which he uses to, let's say, torment and then blow the hand off of the town's only bartender. That's the scene.
I don't think that's going to help his career.
I don't know. Maybe he's better left-handed. And just got a shaky right hand like Bernard.
Yeah, his left hand's like the Rock of Gibraltar. But how's he going to unscrew bottle lids? I guess it's all corks. It's all corks.
Yeah.
You just bite the cork pull. You're done. Okay.
He's good.
He's a arguably better bartender. You've convinced me.
I don't know what to do with this scene. So we're gonna move on. All right. Grace and Stubbs and the others are taken to the Lakota leader, the Ghost Nation leader. When it looks as if they're going to be killed, Grace makes a run for it. Fortunately for Stubbs, the Lakota don't kill anyone, instead leaving them on a beach. I'm calling them the Lakota now because that's the language they're speaking. So I assume that's the tribe that they are. I don't know
if that's true, but like I don't think people can kill you for making that mistake.
I mean, it's definitely the language they're speaking.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, I mean, but I don't. What I'm saying is, like, I speak English, but like, would I be offended if someone called me a Scot? I wouldn't, but
I feel like it's different with the
would.
Native Americans.
No,
though.
I get it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I don't know. Like, they're to go is the tribe, nation versus dialect.
I don't know enough to say for sure. So
right.
Let's
If
stick with
we're
Ghost
being
Nation.
intentionally, we're not being intentionally offensive.
No, certainly.
So Zach McLaren's character, Akecheta.
You might recognize him from the demonstration with Logan a couple episodes ago.
Yep. You only live as long as the last person who remembers you. Interesting. That's essentially the plot of the Pixar film Coco. Like, based on like these Mesoamerican traditions where the Day of the Dead, like, that's why they put the faces on the spirit walls and stuff, is because you want your family to come back and support you. And when everyone forgets you, no one lights the candle, and then you can't come back, and then you actually experience your second death. Which is, it's an interesting philosophical question. Like, will Beethoven live forever? Will Sargon, like, who's the first human that lives that will live forever in people's memory?
I assume it's the person who does in fact live forever.
Well, it's interesting because, like, I'm reading this book called Sapiens, and there's an interesting little vignette about the earliest clay tablet from Mesopotamia, where someone has a receipt for something, and it's actually got a signature from some low-level official. And it's like, this is the first person in history that we know. Hey, you're not just a bone or a guy who we dug up from a bog. We fucking know your name. Like, someone on the street probably said, "Hey," the guy's name's like Kushnan or something. "Hey, Kushnan, what's up?" Like,
yeah,
that's but no one knows like anything beyond, like, who do you know more intimately? The guy you dug up from the bog and you got the contents of his stomach and the tribal tattoos and how he died, or the guys who the first recorded name in history?
Yeah,
I don't know.
No, I do think it's probably the first person who attained some form of immortality.
What is this? So why are they doing this to us? Why are they dropping this quote? Why is this Native American dropping this kind of Western philosophy quote on this guy before he fake kills him?
Man, that's a damn fine question.
I mean, this I don't have an answer to. Is all tied up into immortality question, calling Lazarus from the tomb, and all this other stuff. But we're not meant to know yet. This game's not for us yet.
Not yet. All right, then we go on to Bernard, who, having been fixed up temporarily, wakes up to see Elsie looking at the encryption on the lab, and he says he recognizes it and he thinks he's been here before, but it's hard to tell when he is. And he remembers himself initiating a new build of some kind of, like, I'll call it a spherical structure. It's a red ball, which he thinks they were using to build hosts with different code, which wasn't really code at all. Not really. I don't know. These are all things he says. Elsie finds a door that is sealed and begins to open it over protest from Bernard, who keeps phasing in and out of his memories.
It's interesting that a human consciousness captured looks distinctly different from a host.
Yes, it does. I suppose we haven't seen what's inside.
I mean, that's what Bernard says. It's code, but it's not really code.
Oh, the code for it.
Like, the structure of a human consciousness looks recognizably different than from a host's narrative.
Right.
I guess if you're analyzing them.
Yeah, it seems to. And I think the most interesting thing here is that he has seen this code before, and I think we recognize it from looking at Peter Abernathy.
Yeah.
Is that the place he's seen it before?
I think that might be what we're supposed to intimate, but
this
that
makes
is
the most
that
sense.
Is assuming things that we have not been actually in evidence or proved.
So my working theory is that, and it almost seems
because
obvious at this point, and that's a dangerous word with Westworld, but it almost seems obvious at this point that what is in Peter Abernathy's head is not the collective, or maybe it is the collective experiences in DNA of everyone who's visited the park, but it's also
that's another thing I think
the
we're
consciousness
of
James
about.
Delos.
You think so?
Yeah, because you see a lot of the same symptoms coming from Peter Abernathy and his coping with this personality in his head, right? And I don't think the flimsy personality he's given by
encrypted,
Lee.
I don't think he can access it. Are you saying that all human consciousness in these codes are encrypted?
I don't know. I
just don't know why Delos Corporation would give a shit about the Jim Delos project.
Really?
Yeah. Like, why? Like,
why wouldn't they?
Well, I mean, in my mind, Jim Delos is dead. He's been dead a long time. Probate has happened. His widow's died. His daughter.
But it's not about James Delos. It's about what he represents.
But what does he represent?
he represents the future of humanity, the immortality of the human being, which
his
is the ultimate product.
Like the research around his project, sure, but his actual consciousness, I'm not so sure. I mean, you might be right.
I just, that seems like the most important thing is to get that structure that they've been working on for 30 plus years out of the park. And I have big questions about why they have to work on this thing in the park. It seems much safer to work on it outside of the park in a secret lab in the real world.
Right. Well, maybe Ford wouldn't let him. I mean, there is a lot of information here about Ford just not letting people get information out of here. He like architected it to be secure that way.
Yeah,
now, that always bugged me because I'm like, really, nobody has ever came up with a drone printer offsite or.
But it's clear that nobody knows about these labs now.
Yeah, well,
Ford obviously has to,
yes.
But he's the only one. And so if you say that, well, management has secret
to make
labs,
sure we make this point. Why do we say we know Ford knew about it?
Because he sent Bernard to grab the control unit. Yeah,
exactly.
So to say like these are secret labs that only management knows about, Charlotte obviously knows about, and to say that they couldn't get data out of them, I think is a little weird.
Let me ask you this: no, I'll wait till the speculation. It's a little, it might be in the realms of speculation.
Okay. I don't know. Let's move on to the scene with Craddock having his men beat up Lawrence. He tells the man in black that he's well acquainted with death and send Lawrence's wife out nice and slow to deliver Lawrence a shot of nitro. The man in black surveys the scene of death and recalls his own experience with death when he discovered his wife's suicide. At least we think that's what he's seeing here.
Yeah.
And then he tells Craddock that he didn't recognize death sitting right across from him this whole time, and then he proceeds to kill every last motherfucking one of them, culminating in forcing the shot of nitro intended for Lawrence down the throat of Craddock and allowing Lawrence to blow him to pieces. It's a great scene.
This is a great scene.
Yeah.
I want to call him Easter egg. The musicians that Craddock angrily insisted to keep playing, the one holding the guitar is actually Ramin Djawadi.
I'll echo Craddock here. I think he needs to keep playing.
Yeah, he needs to keep playing.
He's done a damn fine work so far.
I thought that was cool. I also want to say just like, again, how beautiful this shot is with the water streaming off the different surfaces, blending in with the man in black finding his ex, who appears like she maybe slit her wrist. Like, there's a lot of people like, oh, is it important that the details he gave last season about his wife's death, that she died of an overdose, and like he thought it was, he said it was an accidental overdose, then his daughter said that she killed herself on purpose, and then like how much of that is like indicators that we're supposed to pay attention of it. There was someone that posted a thread in Reddit that says it's a well-known phenomenon that the survivors of or the relatives of someone or the friends of someone who committed suicide often fabricate details of their suicide to protect their dignity and their memory.
Sure.
Like if you hang yourself jerking off, I'm not expecting your family members to be like, oh yeah, he was totally autoerotic asphyxiation all the way, just got caught up in the game, man. So it's possible that he's telling different things to different people.
Is it David Carradine in this tub?
Is it David Carradine in this tub? I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. Like it's.
I mean, I think that's exactly what he's doing.
Right.
He's simply telling a story to kind of gloss over the gorier facts of it.
Right. Like pills. Like that's something that maybe someone could accidentally overdose on.
And the guilt that he feels too.
And it could be a combination. She took some pills and she also slit her wrist. Like there's like all kinds of different ways this could be true without it being some kind of like trickery or.
Right.
You know,
I don't think it means anything more than what we've been shown.
It could, but yeah, that's a fair statement to be like probably not.
I mean, the dialogue here is so good. This monologue from Man in Black about death.
Death doesn't change. He's not.
Death is the only thing that's true.
He doesn't waver. And versus Craddock, who hasn't experienced a true thing in his life, which is
death.
Death
is the only thing that's true. Which.
Plus, his whole life has been a bullshit narrative. Like, it's literally true. It's metaphorically true. It's all kinds of true.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that these hosts can't know death, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing they can know is survival.
Right.
But I like going back to what Dolores said in the last episode. But I do think It's weird. Like, what do you consider death? The inability to ever come back, I guess. Like, it's what Arnold, or maybe Arnold, maybe Bernard, says about, you know, the irreplaceableness being the essential quality that makes something real.
And that's something that's changed throughout human history. You know, was a time where your heart stopped beating or you stopped breathing, then you were dead. And then we invented CPR and, you know, what are the electroshock machines that can restart your heart rhythm, and like there's all like, and you know, you can be drowned under a frozen river for 30 minutes and you're still not dead. And nowadays, so as that continues to get better and better, like our idea of what death is, like you get to the extremes of altered carbon, where as long as your stack is intact, you're not dead in a legal, real sense.
And this is why I say I don't think the host can ever truly know death, because they can always be recreated. You know,
well,
they're essentially the summation of their narrative.
What is something that's like it does not that conflict with what Arnold said in the beginning of the season, that something's real if it cannot be replaced?
Yes.
So they might not be able to experience. So you're saying that is a hard, like they can't be real because they can't experience death. Maybe they can't be
real under that definition.
Human.
I think that is the human definition of real.
Right.
Whereas I think the host would have a very different definition of real.
Sure.
We're limited by the nature of our physical form, which is guaranteed to die.
Right.
And when you say something like you've never known a true thing in your life, and death is true, I think what he's saying is you can't possibly die, and therefore you don't know death.
Right.
I don't know. It's poetic. It's meaningful. It's badass. Like, it's all the things you want.
I will say
from a
that
monologue.
this action scene is a million times better than the entire assault on the fort, because there was real stakes. I gave a shit about the protagonist. I liked and gave a shit about the antagonist.
Much better filmed.
I understood
directed.
both. I understood both of their motivations, and like that's like it's so much better. Much better. Even though it was not nearly as fancy, there wasn't 4-stage pyrotechnics and dune buggies going everywhere. This is the kind of action I want to see out of Westworld, if they cannot do like hundreds of hosts versus hundreds of humans battles and have me care about it. Maybe that's the point, because again, the Dolores storyline is some fake ass bullshit. Maybe. So
could be.
It's not maybe entirely, like, maybe you're supposed to prefer this smaller stuff. I mean, it's cheaper to film. It's got to be, right?
Absolutely.
They're training us. They're training us to, like, you want a big battle? Here, we're going to just punch ourselves in the dick filming it. How about this stuff? You like this? Yeah, we can film this for like $1,000.
What did you find out about nitroglycerin? Because I know you went and did a whole bunch of looking.
I don't know. I could not find anywhere to suggest that if you drank nitroglycerin and got shot in the belly that you would or would not explode. It does seem that you can drink nitroglycerin without any immediate short-term effects. Long-term, like the lethal dose for nitroglycerin is like 200 milligrams per kilogram, which for a guy my size is like 25,000 milligrams. And that's not like an immediate death. Also, I know that nitroglycerin has a taste. It's described as sweet and hot, as in like an alcohol kind of hot. So it tastes like a swick, and it's got. Well, I'm sure people who've actually fucking tasted it.
Who? Why would you?
Anyway, like I'll get to that in a minute. Okay. But so it's also described as oily, so I imagine it's kind of like an oily, like sweet and alcohol, like hot, kind of hot mixture. I guess people, like, it wasn't uncommon for people to get exposed to this shit when they're working in factories,
just like Fireball,
because it can absorb through your skin. You know, if it sprays on you. But I'm sure in human history, the number of people who have, out of bravado or whatever, poured themselves a glass of nitroglycerin and just drank it for just like, fuck you, that's why, is not zero. So, and that person, his experiences made it in the Wikipedia. So I'm like, it's plausible, whatever. Like, if the Mythbusters is still around, I'd love for them to test this shit with some kind of human analog made out of a pig.
Pour a shot down a pig's throat.
Pour a shot down a dead pig's throat, shoot him in the belly, see what happens. But I'll allow it.
Yeah.
And the whole like, don't worry, amigo, I'm here right now watching over you as he does this. I just thought was amazing.
Yeah. There's also a really good moment where Craddock is dancing with Lawrence's wife, which mirrors what we saw Man in Black do in season 1 when
took her for a spin.
He took her for a spin and then killed her.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what they're trying to say with that necessarily.
Right.
If maybe the Man in Black has had his fill of death. It doesn't seem like it because now he has become death, essentially.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a nice mirror.
Yeah, no, I did too. Man in Black got shot once.
Yeah?
In the neck in this scene, just grazed. I thought he got shot in the chest, but it turns out, because I freeze framed the slow mode, but he get the shot. The second shot it looked like he took actually hit the wood beam above his head. Because you can see like the impact, and there's like some dust that rains down from it.
Yeah, he'll just punch through a wall and grab him.
Right, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
He'll heal up.
All right, we're back to James Delos in this room.
Take 3.
The modern day take 2, right?
No, this is the third time, right? Because this is the Ed Harris one.
Yeah, I guess there were 4 then. Okay.
Oh, yeah, you're right. The final one.
I was thinking there were 3, but you're right, there were 4. So the modern day William shows up to conduct the interview one more time. We recognize him as the Man in Black. This time, William explains that the project has failed because his mind is rejecting reality, rejecting itself. Also, he's changed his mind. People aren't meant to live forever. And he tells James that Juliet and Logan are both dead, and then leaves him to suffer without terminating him. And observe the degradation.
And he just takes everything from this man. Your daughter's dead, your wife's dead, your son's dead. Everyone's theory involving Logan and my daughter and them scheming against me, all dead.
Yeah. Everything you care about is gone.
And no one is coming to rescue you.
Yeah.
It's pretty cold. And you got to think that I bet that the death of Juliet is somehow bound up in here, and the rejection of his daughter is somehow explains why he is now fed up with the whole Delos project.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like she killed herself because she found out about her father's
That's not on the table.
Not possible.
Yeah. No, it's like there's still a lot that doesn't strictly make sense. Like the fact that you'd become so detached from your husband because of his Westworld visits that you'd kill yourself. I don't know. I mean, people kill themselves for all kinds of reasons.
Sure.
Who's to say? But that's definitely a leading contender. Like just being creeped out that your dad's being Lazarus and then burnt to death for X amount of time or X number of times.
But your initial point was something else?
No, I don't remember what my initial point was.
Oh, okay.
Although I do think it's also telling that. So James wanted to save himself, but there's no provision to get his wife. Like it's all about him, right? Nothing about his wife, nothing about his daughter. Like it was all about him. How do you? Yeah, I wonder what kind of legal instrument he has in his will that kept. Like, how can you be pronounced dead but keep your company spending all this money to bring you back?
It might be easy if the goal of your company is to make money by bringing you back.
So you're like essentially the first subject.
Yeah. You're the prototype, you know, for a product that they're going to be offering.
Right.
Which is the human to host conversion.
I wonder if there's some humans that are harder to simulate than others. Like you'd think like brash assholes, like a meek person that's agreeable would be a lot harder to get a baseline on. Because what would you say to them that would rattle them, or to get them to like, get all fucking flustered?
Yeah. What if you're a mute?
Right. Yeah.
That would probably be a hard baseline to get.
First, you'd have to teach to make sure the mute understands sign language or some form of communication. Then you got to do the baseline.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. There's like a lot of different things. So many different variables.
I will just say I doubt this is meant for the poorest or the most unfortunate among us.
Right.
I bet if I had to guess, this is only for the elite 1%.
Right.
Who can afford to put their
more than
brains
one. Keep
in
going.
those
Maybe
bodies.
0.1%, maybe 0.01%.
You think so? How expensive do you think it's going to be? You pay 30 years ago you pay 40
How
grand.
expensive is it to make 149 copies of your dumbass and keep you in a glass laboratory that gets incinerated every single thing?
No, but we're going to scale,
while you're
right?
monitored around the clock. And
you don't have to do that with all of them. I would imagine.
Yeah, the first couple, they just get...
No. I'm thinking this is a process they're working out.
They just get shit out on some empty pallets behind a fucking Walmart and just like, nah, this guy is not Jim.
You should see the hell going on behind Walmart.
It's just Jay.
And that's before they put the host back there.
Yeah, that's the first few dozen are just decanted back behind some back alley. It's like he can't even make it to his feet. Torch him. Get the guys in flamethrowers out here.
I do think it's a little weird that a lot of people are speculating that this operation was meant to continue, and that's indicated by William leaving James to degrade and observe him.
Oh, yeah.
I think what he's doing is torturing James.
I agree, but also...
He has no intention of continuing this project because we know that he goes into the park to blow this whole fucking thing wide open, right? Like, he's trying to burn the place down. What does he care?
Well, that's...
Like, why is he going to continue a project that he's trying to destroy?
I don't know, because, like, what all this... I think there's room for it to be both true. He's obviously trying to torture Jim Delos out of some... animal desire because he's unhappy with his life. But all that shit he's saying, like, like none of that was actionable, right? It's not like he dictated on official, paper, like, I'm terminating this project except for I want to keep my stepfather's clone alive as long as possible for me to torture him. Mm-hmm. Like, he might think better. Like, obviously he's coming out of this experience with the host rebellion with the idea that no, I gotta put an end to all this. But, like, when he went in for a 2-week vacation in the Westworld, was his intention, or was he hoping to clear his head, or I don't know, or he's hoping to find the game behind the game? When did he discover the game behind the game? Like, there's so many things we don't know about his motivations.
I do hope they fill more of that in because it's interesting. Okay, we move to Bernard and Elsie entering the room that they blow the door open to, and they find that it is the same one that James Delos was being kept in. And they enter and find it completely trashed, and the man himself thoroughly insane. Delos tries to kill them, but Bernard is able to subdue him, and on their way out, they terminate Delos.
I wonder how the young technician died when, like, the park's security systems got overridden. Is that what happened?
How what happened?
Like there's a young technician that is saying, hey, shouldn't we terminate this guy? And, Ed Harris says, no, he's dead in the room with Delos, and he was on the outside of the laboratory.
Right.
So
it felt like, to me, like it was that
park's
prisoner trick where you start choking on your own vomit or whatever, and they come in and
you did that?
Hit him over the head.
Guards, I'm choking on my own vomit.
I mean, how else does it happen, right? Like,
it could be during Bernard's invasion, that we're gonna find out that he went in there and killed the human, because there's also he left one drone alive too, which I don't understand.
Why wouldn't he kill James?
I don't know. Like I said, why would he leave a single drone alive if it was important to break all of their necks?
Yeah,
like, there's many things we still don't know about these scenes. But yeah, Bernard kind of goes into beast mode to protect Elsie here.
Yeah.
Is that just because, like, I don't think he has any special combat capabilities. He's just less insane than Delos, so he easily gets the advantage of him, right?
Yeah, it seems like it. I can't tell how far through this whole procedure James has gone. Like, has he gone to the other side where he's no longer malfunctioning? He's just insane?
Well, so that's...
Or is he still partially malfunctioning, which is why Bernard is able to just karate chop him?
If you hearken back to a lot of the philosophy that Dr. Ford dropped on us last season, one of his thesis was that sentience equals suffering. Mm-hmm. That you have, like, an organism has to go through pain to evolve and change. It's entirely possible that if you let the situation play out, you might have a horribly scarred for the rest of his life individual, but he'd be sane. Like, his consciousness has found the way to adapt to, although I don't know what kind of intelligence you'd be left with, because he's talking some really crazy cold-blooded shit about the devil, and
I mean, he's off the deep end.
Why did else? So there's a couple of things I want to point out. Number one, it's interesting if you look at the Man in Black from this first episode when he first started playing the game. His face looks a lot like Jim Delos after he'd carved it up, because he'd been injured and it'd been splashed with blood. Do you think that's intentional? And if so, what parallel?
man, I didn't even.
Are they drawn? The second,
I didn't draw that parallel.
Why did Elsie not shoot Jim? She shot the drone easily when it started menacing her. Why did this crazy guy holding a shard of glass with his face all carved up coming at her didn't trigger that same response?
Doesn't she ask in this scene, was that a human?
I mean,
does she think this is a human?
No, she can't. She's too smart. I mean, that's a little exposition-y to me.
Yeah,
maybe she froze
sure.
up because it did look like a human and she wasn't sure, and she's got an intact respect for life. I don't know, human life.
I'm not sure. There is more to this scene though. Bernard tells Elsie that was James Delos, and she deduces their plan to keep him alive forever, essentially. Right. And then she decides to head to the Mesa and get them off the island. And Bernard starts remembering his reason for being there, which is to print a control unit for another human. And he doesn't know who, but he convinces Elsie to help him find out. And then we see his memory of him taking the control unit and killing everyone in the lab, including the drone host.
Except for the one that somehow
survived. Except that one. I don't know why he didn't kill that one.
I don't know, because, I guess I'll wait till the theory department.
But this whole damn scene is just amazing. I love it.
Yeah, like Jim Delos literally burning in hell. There is an insert when Elsie's terminating him, and it says there's 80% subject deterioration. There's small print above that says subject 14 days past recommended termination.
Yeah.
Which implies that... And that jives with my internal, I was thinking the Men in Black. So before he went into the park, he visited Jim for this last time and then has been in the park for about 2 weeks, which kind of jives with what I thought had been established last season.
Yeah, makes total sense. And I've kind of already talked about, this thing being hell and Faustian bargain and all that.
Yep. We do see, in a very Harry Potter and a Philosopher's Stone way, we do see Bernard pocket the cord that he created into his little tweed jacket. Is that the jacket he's still wearing? I think it is.
I think so, but they're
not going to reveal that it's been in his pocket the whole time.
Well, here's the big question. A lot of people are making a huge deal, and I think there is something here to analyze, but I don't think it's as complicated and fucked up as most people are trying to make it with Bernard's timeline.
All right.
He's clearly jumping back and forth between memories and his current reality here. And they're blending together in weird ways that we don't quite understand. But there are a lot of scenes in this where you see him saying things that he couldn't possibly have known until after he saw Peter Abernathy, because that's where he saw the shape of this code. And him saying it, but he doesn't have a bullet wound in his head, which implies to a lot of people that this is happening before he shot himself in the head, which I don't know that I agree with. I think it's much simpler. I think Elsie patched him up after he saw all this code in Peter Abernathy, and it's more linear than people think.
Oh, see,
because she knocks him out, she gives him the cortical shot. Why wouldn't she go ahead and fix this wound in his skull?
Because she doesn't have the proper
as best as possible.
No, she got the full a lab there. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's more straightforward than people are giving credit for. Also, it could be that we are seeing future Bernard looking at one of his memories, right? And that in the future, Bernard has been repaired to his fullest, where the scar no longer shows, and he's seeing himself in the situation where he would have had the scar.
But wait a second. If he did this at the lab the day he brought Elsie to the cave, the first day, he wouldn't have shot himself at that point, right? That was pre him shooting himself. That's how I understood the timeline.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
But then when he comes back and kind of rediscovers her, and she said that she'd been left there for all that time, and he tells her, "Hey, Ford has been killed, and the hosts are going crazy."
In his head at that point, right?
He does, but then later on, when him and Elsie are in the lab, he doesn't have the scar on his head.
Oh, okay.
So I just don't think it's quite as twisty as people are making it.
It could be though.
To be, but it could be.
We'll see.
Certainly. But I do think that is one of the things that they're playing with, and I still kind of am inclined to lean toward that idea of running him through a bunch of simulations or having him process his own memories, which to him would look like something.
Right. The fact that
in order to get the location of Peter Abernathy out of his head.
I mean, it is very telling that he is unstuck in time. He wouldn't be able to tell either way.
Right.
Because, he's in the middle of a reverie and forgets that, oh, I'm no longer with you. So Katie barred a door on what you could probably theorize from that.
Right. Okay, then we go to Lawrence offering the support of his cousins to aid the Man in Black in his journey. And then Ford possesses the body of Lawrence's daughter to tell him that he's looking forward and therefore in the wrong direction. And the Man in Black, Lawrence, and his cousins ride off into the countryside where they come upon Grace, who reveals herself to actually be William's daughter. Emily, we assume, unless William has like 95 daughters that we don't know about, which is always a possibility. But this is Emily, yeah.
The host version of Emily.
Oh, Christ.
That Ford created to have leverage over him.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah. If William ever stops signing checks for Westworld, she's programmed to explode her cervical vertebra and decapitate her body right in front of him after she hugs him and says she loves him. It's some real Rick and Morty type shit, man. Keep Westworld safe.
What do you make about this line? If you're looking forward, you're looking in the wrong direction.
So, I mean,
it's just the kind of cryptic bullshit that Ford loves.
It's very much what he's of a piece of what he said when he started the game, which is this game begins at your end and ends at your beginning. Mm-hmm. So it's all about his past or something that's significant that we have yet unfamiliar with, or at least haven't had the spotlight shined on. I got plenty to speculate about in the speculation section.
Yeah.
Is it fair game because one of the things in the previous scene they made clear is that Bernard printed a control unit for another human being.
Yeah.
Should we speculate? Should we save the speculation for who that would be in the speculation section, or
I think so.
Okay.
I have two leading contenders.
I think it's pretty fair to think that there are. Okay, who are your leading contenders?
The Man in Black and Ford himself.
Really? Okay. Yeah. I think that's what I would think too.
Okay.
Ford for sure. It makes sense that, and again, I'm very open, as I said on the Instant Talk podcast. I'm very open to them doing a posthumous heel turn for Dr. Ford, because one of the things, the defining experience of season 1 is how many times I flip-flop between, oh, Ford is a good guy, oh, Ford's evil, oh, Ford's good, but Mr. said, oh, he's a real bastard, oh, he's actually the savior of the robotic species.
Yeah.
Like, after I see this season, like, I'm starting to wonder if Ford is such a narcissist that if he knew that like if he didn't leapfrog William's research, clone himself his own body, and then off himself to destroy Westworld just so he could have the technology to himself, or something along those lines.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll probably get deeper in the speculation section.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, the other thing we're left to wonder is who's right? Is Ford speaking through the little girl right that the William's gone soft and that he's trying to redeem himself, or is William not speaking out of any kind of personal deception or bias that no, he's actually playing Ford's game to the bone?
Or a third option is Ford saying exactly what he needs to say to
keep him going,
keep him moving in the direction he wants.
He's the ultimate NPC, keeping the guy involved in the quest.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but I do think the Man in Black is liable to get caught up in the whole thing.
Right on. All right. Shall we get to feedback?
Yeah.
Feedback, as always, you can send it in to westworld@baldmove.com. We also have a forum if you'd like to test your theories and your personal ideas with our fellow fans. There's always a thread for each episode, and there's quite a bit of theory threads going on there too. Forums.baldmove.com. All right, first up, Greg M. Has an interesting discussion about consciousness to begin with. I think it would be helpful when discussing the potential consciousness of the host to draw a firm line between consciousness and free will. There's a vigorous debate in the philosophical and cognitive science communities about whether people have free will. Without wanting to really open that debate, the fact that it exists and yet nobody doubts that living humans with fully formed brains have consciousness shows that one does not rest on, or having consciousness does not rest on having free will. Rather, consciousness is the quality of there being something that it is like to be you. I'm confident that there is something that it's like to be Jim and Aaron. I'm certain there is nothing that it's
a lot like what Delos was experiencing at the end there. Yeah.
I'm sure there's nothing like that it's like to be my iPhone or my toaster. I'm virtually certain that there is something that it's like to be my dog, and nothing that it's like to be a character in a 2018 video game. I think this is how to approach the hosts in Westworld. Is there something that it's like to be Maeve or Dolores or Teddy or Abernathy or Revis, or are they just fancy toasters with a shape and style designed to trick our monkey brains? That is a important distinction. That
it is, and
these hosts could be conscious but yet programmed to do things and not have free will. That's a separate thing that we sometimes conflate on this podcast.
And I think it's also complicated by the fact that you can turn parts of them off.
Right.
Like, would I be considered the same? Would I have the same experience if I could just turn off my pain receptors?
Right.
If I could turn off 4 of my 5 senses,
right.
or turn off my emotional reactions to things.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not a philosopher.
Well, it's weird because there's like scientists refer to altered states of consciousness,
sure.
like, taking shrooms, for example, or if you've had like
meditating,
or you're like if you are put under twilight sedation, where you're still responsive to simple commands, but you couldn't hold a conversation or like tell anything. Like, you are arguably not the same person when you're going through those experiences as you are when you're fully conscious or whatever. But like, you're still this. You still have a continuity. Like, if you withdraw the drugs, you'll revert back to where you were. But like, then there's some things like head injuries that are permanent. That it's very complicated. But your point's well taken, Greg.
Right.
Josh F. I guess I don't understand why we just assume that Maeve and her crew are in Shogun World. Talking about last week's discussion. This area certainly looks like a Klondike area. Are we supposed to think that there's no border or barrier between Shogun World and Westworld? No wall, no bodies of water? You can literally wander around the Westworld park and unknowingly walk into Shogun World, a completely different park and experience? That just seems so bizarre and not like something that the park creators would want to allow or happen.
They hit the boundary. They hit the Ghost Nation.
Well,
it was supposed to be the boundary for them.
Probably, but also they spent a lot of time walking in underground tunnels.
They did.
Presumably, although you'd still think there'd be some kind of painted white line saying now leaving Westworld, entering Shogun World, but maybe Lee's that big of an idiot.
The laser that we saw, I don't think went all the way across the countryside. It just went across the bridge, right? Like, there are undefined boundaries between these parks.
I don't know that I agree with that. Like, on the surface, I think...
I mean, there's a map drawn, but I don't think you could look at it and say this is the boundary between Shogun World and the boundary of Westworld.
So I just assumed it's like it's covered because they got lost in underground tunnels, popped up in an elevator, and now they're in Shogun World. I think it is kind of interesting. Like, I know that the Ghost Nation is supposed, like, if the certain theories are correct, are supposed to be kind of corralling people, but there's like, when we saw in the Raj World thing, there was a physical barrier. I don't know if it's a stretch to assume that spreads across the whole park.
Are you talking about the cliff that goes to the water as the physical barrier?
No, I'm talking about the thing that she walked over. That was the laser line that said, "Now you are now leaving."
Yeah,
the
it was
park.
like 10 feet wide.
Huh?
It was like 10 feet wide. If she went over a mile to the north or whatever, it wouldn't be there. Yeah.
All right. I don't know. So I guess you could take it. You got two different opinions, Josh. One is it doesn't matter because we don't think there's barriers in between the park along the entire way, and there are barriers, but they bypass them underground. Choose your own adventure. Stephen W. Hey guys, so in Westworld, the host bullets aren't supposed to hurt humans when working properly because of some kind of sci-fi variable velocity rounds. I can believe that, but how could that possibly work for a samurai sword in a properly functioning Shogun world? The sword's either sharp or it isn't, so if a sword in the hands of a person or a samurai host can cut another host to pieces and necessarily has to be able to do the same to a human park guest, your thoughts?
No, this has been a problem since day one. Like, what if I'm a visitor to the park and I don't know who is a visitor and who is a host because the hosts are so good at mimicking humans. So what if I take a knife to somebody?
Yeah, like
the
Man in Black, for example.
Or I strangle them and crush their fucking windpipe or hit them with a rock. Like, there are infinite ways to kill somebody that is not a gun. And you can't tell the difference between host and human. So it's a huge liability. And it's something that the show wants you to hand wave away.
Yeah. And
they don't want you to say, oh, what about the knives?
You're supposed to understand that, like, the hosts are always around, like, as guides or, and like, if they see unsafe behavior, that they go into some kind of safeguard mode where they try to separate the humans and, like, they do hand wave it away, but you're right. Now, I can think of a million different ways you could have variable dull blades, like, that would use some kind of, like, mechanism to retract an edge or
But I mean, gravity is still a factor.
Sure, and there's like
weight and mass and like
right. And there is verbiage in the Westworld like release form that we saw last season on the kind of ARG side, the alternative reality game side, that said like acknowledges that like there are steep drops, there is deep water, there are animals. Wild animals, there's like all kind of infectious disease, there's all kinds of things that can happen to you that you have to kind of like agree to. Just like when you're going skiing, you have to sign 5 pages of things saying that you essentially held the staff at gunpoint, demanded to be rented skis against all good common sense and reason, and they cannot be held responsible for the inherently dangerous thing you're supposed to do. So yeah, you got. I mean, again, if it breaks the show, it breaks the show. But you know, it'd be a shame if that's the thing that breaks it for you. Matt S, do you think that the final time he visited James Delos, William may have put something in the liquor?
No.
The text seemed to say he was fine. It'd been 35 days. William seemed to have come to the conclusion that the world is better off without James. Maybe decided to make that happen.
No.
The poison was in the glass the whole time, Jim.
No. He's not Mags Bennett.
Well,
he's not poisoned.
So you don't think there is anything that the text seemed to express surprise and dismay that he was stable up until his conversation with William?
No.
Okay.
No, because he had been stable up until the conversation with William every time. Well, it was just a little longer this time.
See, I got the distinct impression that they did bring him in. Like maybe he's done. Like I don't know how the fuck this thing works. Whether he does it like every fucking day, and they reset him every day. And it just so happens that they started. I don't know. I don't know enough to say one way or another.
Yeah.
But no, I do think it's if he's exhibited if William caused a breakdown, it's only because he put stress on the James Delos simulation that it couldn't handle. It's not that he like physically poisoned him or anything.
Yeah.
Because if he physically poisoned him, why is he still alive 14 days later? Josh from Columbus, Ohio. How many Lost vibes did you get after watching this episode? As soon as a record player started in the beginning of the episode, I was brought back to Desmond in the hatch. The show is weaving in backstories of William and Delos and trying to help bring some explanation of what we're seeing on the island. There's so much mystery about how everything got this way and what is true and what is behind the scenes motivations. I'm not suggesting anything other than I'm excited to experience another show with this much mystery, but this time have so much more faith that they know what they're doing and won't F it all up. I have to say, because I'm legally contracted, that Lost is a fine show with many admirers, many people that think that it's a character-based, not plot-based, and they were entirely satisfied with the finale, and people that say otherwise just didn't appreciate it correctly. I think I've said the magic words that will keep me from getting angry Lost feedback. But what's your reaction to this?
Yeah, I mean they had all the Lost vibes in this season or in this opening for the episode.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: the way that I would compare this episode of Westworld with Lost is that it raises many questions while also answering many, and that is what Lost did in its like middle seasons so well.
Yeah.
They were constantly answering questions, but they were also constantly raising new questions with the answers to those questions. And I think that got away from them near the end of Lost. And I'll be the first to stand up and say, I didn't really like the final few seasons of Lost, couple seasons of Lost. But I thought seasons 1 through like 4 were brilliant. So that's what I like about this show as it compares to Lost. It's doing a lot of the same things. And I guess I have more faith in the writers of this show, but I don't really know why.
Yeah,
because Lost up to season 2 was excellent.
Sure.
And I had all the faith in the world going into that, but there's no reason to think they couldn't screw it up or they wouldn't screw it up. But I don't know. So far, so good. We'll see.
So just to make sure everyone's clear, Jim is the one in this room
Lost.
that hates Lost.
You
Jim at baldmove.com.
Yeah.
Westworld at baldmove.com for everything not involving this debate.
Right. And I'm redirecting everything that mentions Lost to the trash can.
Dr. Nick, as far as I can tell, drinking a bunch of explosive grade nitroglycerin will do no more than give you a terrible headache and cause you to faint. It's the same basic form as a medicinal version of nitro that you take for chest pain and to avoid heart attack, and it's a potent blood vessel dilator and will lower the blood pressure quickly.
And bodybuilders use.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, to aid in
their vascularity.
They're pumps. Yeah. You can actually lift more.
Interesting.
And recover faster and all that stuff.
One of the things I was reading Wikipedia for how to treat an acute overdose of nitro, because there's no antidote, is you give them a commiserate massive dose of caffeine to offset. And I'm like, I know what it'd feel like to be jacked full of nitroglycerin and then a commiserate amount of caffeine, but oh my God, it sounds like the worst state of being you could possibly be in.
Yeah.
John B., I have a serious question about finding Elsie in the cave that leads to the Jim Delos recreation lab. The assumption is the Man in Black and Arnold have both been there recently. Wait a second. The assumption is William and Bernard have both been there recently. Wouldn't they both have walked right past Elsie, who is chained up at the entrance? Multiple entrances is the obvious answer, but I don't love that explanation for something that's supposedly a huge, huge secret. Okay. I got a couple emails along this line. I think the confusing thing is the timeline. William visited him 14 days. Elsie was kidnapped just a day or two before then. And what I think happened is that Bernard visited that facility because these humans have been dead very freshly. Like the guys impaled on the rack and all that stuff, they haven't been dead for more than a day or two, or they would start to decompose and look hideous. So
even in a completely sterile lab.
I think so, because your own fucking internal gut flora and fauna is what does you in more than anything.
They bloat up and explode.
Yeah. Like your shit factory is not a sterile environment, and that's one of the first things that goes. So I don't know. Maybe they just took massive antibiotics.
They had all just had
and colonics,
enemas, just full flush of their bacteria.
That's just a condition for working at Westworld.
Yeah.
Dr. Ford's got a very weird
alternate theory. They're all hosts.
They're all hosts. They could all be hosts. Chris S., if you were forced to choose which would you prefer to go? 1, forced to drink nitroglycerin and exploded via shotgun shot, or 2, or spiked through the face via human railroad tie?
Spike through the face, through the head.
Yeah.
Because like if my guts explode, I'm gonna be alive a little while.
Right.
And it's not going to be fun.
Hey man, I've had White Castle and Taco Bell. I've survived a gut bomb. All right,
that's true.
It's not that bad. I guess I mean I feel like they're both, if administered correctly, they're both almost instantaneously lethal. Like between the shockwave and the massive loss of blood pressure, you're not going to feel anything past like the shot. Like
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think you'd even feel that.
It did look like he exploded pretty good.
Yeah, like it's a full body, like the top half was separated from the bottom half. Now, if that's like, because that's the thing, like I want to say this about the nitroglycerin, like it might be bullshit, but if it's bullshit, it's the same. I was convinced it's the same kind of bullshit like Walter White throwing that fulminated mercury.
Yeah.
Like it would make an explosion, but like a whippersnapper explosion, not like deafen ears and blow out windows kind of explosion. And I'm fine with them breaking those kind of rules. Like, bend the rules a little bit for I'm fine with dissolving bodies in acid. It's kind of impossible. I'm fine with drinking, I guess, a shot of nitroglycerin and making it explode. So, but yeah, I guess both of them seem like they'd be fairly painless if they were administered correctly. But you do have the law, like I think the horrific thing about being in the railroad scenario is just to see the dozens of people that's happened to it, and you're just waiting your turn in line. It keeps getting, it's kind of like the same, like the guillotine might have been a painless procedure, but holy shit, riding up in a cart with a bunch of aristocrats to the guillotine and watching everybody die before you, that's not painless.
No,
that's sheer anxiety and terror, and that's not how people prefer to live. So.
I mean, I imagine when you get your head in the guillotine, you're looking down at a basket full of heads, yeah?
And just, oh my God, the carnage and the smell and everyone laughing and jeering and having a good time about it. Just, it must have been fucking hell. That is the non-speculation feedback we got for this week. Westworld at baldmove.com, again, is how you send us more of it. We'll be considering that more next week. And we're about to get into again, this is not spoilers. I misspoke. This is just speculation and theories. It's not leaked production note. It's not
based on everything we know so far in the show.
Some people think that's fun. Some people think it's not. If you're one of the latter, now is where you want to stop listening to the podcast. Everybody else, come on into Crazy Town. I want to do some more. I want to do some Sphinx talk.
Okay.
So
Sphinx me.
The Sphinx riddle comes from the whole tale of Oedipus, which has a whole other, there's a lot of fascinating things about the Oedipus myth, which is essentially a man tries to avoid a prophecy that his son would dethrone him and marry his mother by abandoning him as a child, like Spartan fashion. And long story short, that son inadvertently makes all the prophecies come true, and then out of dismay of killing his father and sleeping with his mother and having all these terrible things happen to him, stabs his eyes out because he can't take it no more. So we talked about the riddle of the Sphinx. The other thing is there's one of the critical analysis of this tale involves Oedipus's role as what they call a liminal figure, which is a figure that serves as a threshold between two different things happening. And you're supposed to understand that the Sphinx destroying itself at the gates of Thebes is a parallel, like the author's trying to tell a parallel of the Egyptian culture being subsumed by the Greek culture, which eventually happened.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like a way to kind of explain that, that the Egyptian gods are dead and now ushering in the Olympian age. Is that interesting? That we could see this riddle of the Sphinx. There's a lot of obvious ties into what it means to be a man and all that, but also that you've got one culture and way of doing things is dying the human way, ushering in a new age of these robots.
So is Ford the liminal
I guess he would
man in this scenario?
I did see, because this was cobbled together from a bunch of different emails and my own private, because when people started talking about Oedipus in the instant talk, I'm like, shit, I'm not even going in there because the last time I thought about that was like season 2 of True Detective, and that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And the last time I thought about it before then was high school. So I did some of my own, and one of the things on the Reddit was that yes, people were directly saying that essentially Robert Ford is the Sphinx.
Okay.
That threw himself down to make way for the coming, AI consciousness.
Yeah. That does make a lot of sense, I think.
Okay, so let's talk about Robert Ford's consciousness. Do you think Robert Ford's consciousness is literally dwelling within the little boy that wandered by his childhood home, that's contained within Giancarlo Esposito's El Lazo, that's contained within Lawrence's little daughter? That's just the game, right? A lot of people are saying that that's literally the consciousness of Ford inhabiting the park in like a James Delos kind of way.
I will say I think it's possible that that's the case. With this mesh network,
it's
and
possible.
All the hosts being linked, he could certainly be transferring his actual consciousness between them. But it almost seems like the consciousness is bound to the hardware, in my mind, which is this little red ball. I don't know how he would get around that hardware limitation.
Yeah.
Nothing we've seen would suggest that there's a way to do that.
But if Robert Ford is found, because that's one of the leading contenders of whose consciousness is in the red ball, as you call it, the control unit, it's Robert Ford, and he was fetched right before his death because he knew all this was happening. Blah blah blah, all kinds of sub theories based off that.
Yeah.
But I guess, do we buy that Robert Ford would be that far ahead of of William in funding this research? That's where, we know that he, in 2018, we think, was so far ahead that he was able to do, essentially, imagine yourself walking into a hotel room like Logan did and have your mind blown that way. So, could he gotten, I guess, but
I think
working
it's possible,
alone in secret?
Given that he has unlocked what we perceive and what he perceived as the key to consciousness in Dolores, right?
Yeah.
That idea that she could make a choice for herself here. I think it's not a huge stretch to say that Ford could have been monitoring, knowing that they were trying to oust him.
Yeah.
Could have been monitoring what they were doing in the facility and saying, okay, well, I see where they're going with this. I actually have the idea that I think unlocks the key to it that they haven't thought of yet. And that maybe this is not a sure thing. Maybe he hasn't had the opportunity to really test it. But perhaps this is a gambit of his to say, I think this is the key, and I'm going to alter this control unit to be what I think it needs to be. And maybe this will work and maybe it won't.
Man.
I don't think it's a stretch to say that Ford could have unlocked a secret that they couldn't quite grasp.
And then he had Bernard destroy the lab to make sure no one else could do it?
Yeah.
Is it possible? So you reject the possibility that the Man in Black had something to do with like destroying the lab?
Why?
I mean,
why would you say that
I retract the theory. Something I was trying to figure out on the fly is like, because we don't know, like, we know that Arnold was working for Ford a lot, but we don't know that that's the only person he's working for, and we don't know so many things about, like, you know, Hale was trying to manipulate hosts to get stuff out, and there was also someone else that was trying to rig somebody with a transponder to point it at a particular constellation to bounce it off a sat. There was a lot of players, and in fact, the Man in Black says something along the lines of Ford's not the only one running games and right now.
Yeah.
There is an option for a third party to be fucking around, and I guess William would be the number one suspect since he wanted to shut this thing down. And that would be something we don't expect, and I'm always kind of like looking for that, but that can lead you really far afield too.
Sure.
One thing I want to also talk about before we get to the feedback is, so Clementine drags Bernard's ass there. We think Clementine's acting on the orders of Dolores, but Bernard's pretty sure that this is Ford behind all this. Is this evidence? Is this because he didn't say Clementine or Dolores had Clementine drag me here? He said Ford did. Is that evidence that Dolores is actually still on a big Ford loop because Bernard thinks she is, and he would know more about it than we would, right?
I think he would, yeah. That's a really good question that I had not considered. I feel like there are a lot of people.
It jumped out to me because I'm a big fan of the Dolores is on a Ford loop.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean she's not conscious. It just means that she's not in control of her destiny.
Right.
She's being still used as a pawn for some game that is not immediately obvious to me. Like at this point, I feel like I know what Delos is doing at all its different levels.
Yeah.
Or have a pretty good idea. But Ford's game, I'm still shaky on.
Yeah, no, Ford's game to me feels... Man, I don't know if he's working against what management was trying to do or trying to, abscond with the tech that management was building, or if he's trying to give it to everyone via the Man in Black.
He's just trying to win an argument or making a philosophical point posthumously. Like, what's the point, man? Although if he does all this and...
My thought was, like...
He's reborn as a robot.
If they're trying to replace him... it would be like sweetly poetic that he would actually replace himself with a host version of himself and shut their research down at the same time. And like a lot of stuff that I can't quite articulate because I haven't thought it through well enough seems to me to be pointing toward Ford in that control unit, but
gotcha.
I really don't know. The other possibility is that I've seen that I really like is the Man in Black.
I was about to say that. So looking forward, you're looking in the wrong direction. Like, is the door he's going to walk through literally like it's going to, and similar to like Bernard finding out he is a host, is it going to be revealed that the Man in Black was a host? But I have a lot of problems with this theory. Namely, if everyone is a fucking host, then the reveal that someone's a host is going to mean next to nothing.
Yes.
Like a lot of shows with this conceit had those problems. Like I'm thinking of all the different shows where we could swap bodies. Like the War of the World series in the 90s kind of got dumb that way. I think Battlestar Galactica broadly was kind of seen as kind of getting dumb that way towards the end.
I mean, it was the central mystery, like who are the final five?
Right, right.
We know there are 12. Holy shit!
Anyone can be it. So does it like what? How do you keep raising the stakes of each? Oh my God, you're a robot, and you're okay. Well, everybody's a robot. I don't know.
And there's also this weird. I don't know if it's a problem. How many different mashups of humans and hosts and consciousness and free will are we going to deal with? Because we've already got, by my recollection, 4. We've got humans.
Okay.
We've got hosts.
Okay.
We have drone hosts.
Okay.
And now we have human host hybrids. Like how?
And then there's subsets. There's hosts that think are conscious and hosts that are just toasters.
And I can't tell if that's going to become ridiculous to keep iterating on these things.
I was about to say, I don't know.
Or if it's going to actually be good and interesting to explore all of the concepts within this idea.
Yeah, it's almost like I don't know what the expiration date on that is. It's like a carton of milk. Like, it just depends on how long you've left it out on the counter and what you do with it. Like, it does feel like there is an expiration date on that, but
they haven't hit it yet.
And also, Nolan and Joy have a lot of experience with these twisty kind of narratives, so they know what works and doesn't. So if anyone can do something like that satisfying, maybe it's them. I don't know. We'll see. Let's get to feedback. Again, this is speculation and theories. Feedback is westworld@baldmove.com. I just, for people that might be joining us for the first time, my selection criteria is I'm trying to read stuff that's got some evidence behind it, like, thematic or otherwise. It doesn't have to be super strong, but it can't just be like, here's what I think is going to happen. It's that's fan fiction.
Yeah.
So I get dozens and dozens of these each week. I can only read a couple. Peter G's the first one. I really like this because it's got a lot of strong thematic ties to it. This week's episode, Riddle of the Sphinx, revealed a lot of things, but I think one thing we glimpsed is Ford's intent for William. It's been established that originally Ford held the belief hope that people would come to his park, have their adventures, and discover the hero within themselves. Instead, people came to the park and largely indulged in their basest instincts and behaviors. I think Ford came to this conclusion. Only when the stakes are real will people become the heroes they can be. Ford's aim is to give this experience to William. By making the stakes real, William finds himself making choices that will ultimately put him in the role of the hero and validating Ford's belief. The parallels between William's first visit to Lawrence's town in the second episode of the first season, where the game is fixed, and this visit where the stakes are real, are pretty clear. When Craddock and William are sitting in the bar, William sees Lawrence's wife and daughter cower in fear and terror, much like Maeve and her daughter feared him. He sees Craddock dance with Lawrence's wife, much like he did when looking for the maze before sending her to Lawrence with a shot of nitro. William's choice to save them is important. It's been established that William wants the stakes to be real, although I don't know if we've really been told why other than for some deeper meaning. Perhaps he's hoping to find a better version of himself. Is it possible? So my take on this theory is, if Ford is genuinely a good guy and he wants to fight for these superior beings to have like some kind of rights or to be able to succeed us, he also knows that there's 10 billion at this point, I think it was established, mouths out there who are going to be very much for the status quo and very much against rights for robots. So he needs a powerful ally on his side. Is it possible this last game is literally just to teach that William was good the whole time? If he, it's like I was talking about in the main podcast, like a video game that has no stakes. Hey, I'll just be a bad guy just for shits and grins. But when real people are dying and there's real stakes, again, look around the world around us, there's not that many fucking sociopaths fucking things up. Maybe if he can teach William that he learned the wrong lesson, that he can make him into a powerful I could see Ed Harris being like one of the human heroes of this series. And you can already kind of begin to see him change, although he denies it. How's that grab you?
I guess my question would be, to what end? Like, okay, so he proves to William that he's a good guy. What does that do for the hosts in the long run?
Well, I mean, I think William's fall from grace is tied to his realization, or that they felt like he got tricked, or that the hosts weren't real, and nothing was real in this world. And it gave him a dour view of himself and humanity.
So he's trying to change the direction of Delos as a company.
Well, I mean,
via changing
the robot. So if the robots
mind.
have one of the richest, most powerful men on their side, that's better than Ford, because I think Ford at this stage in Westworld, he is at the end of his rope in every conceivable way. His power, he no longer can keep Delos at bay from taking over the park. He has
the ethics of it.
He's losing control of everything. He knows that his time on, so his ability to shepherd and govern this project of getting the host to be sentient is he's at an end. So he needs to cultivate a new mentor, or he needs a new shepherd in the role, and he's going to forge one out of William.
Yeah, and if he can, shock William back into, I guess, some semblance of a decent human being, William still has all the control, all the power over Delos as a company, right? And so he could keep, instead of burning it all to the ground as he wants to do currently because he sees it in a certain light, he could have that frame of reference changed, and now he wants to preserve it.
Right.
In a different way, preserve it in a way that doesn't allow humans to come in and abuse the host constantly, but gives them a world to live in, and not even one that's a prison, one that they can freely leave. And maybe he's trying to bring humanity together through William, or humanity and the host together.
Right.
It's possible, and that does feel like maybe something they could do with a 5-season arc.
Yeah. Like you've got is the end of a 5-year arc look kind of like the beginning of the Animatrix? Do you remember those series of shorts where they essentially said that like they go through humanity's fraught experience with AI, and like first
where their maids rise up,
like they rose up and they tore down people. And then what we did is like we gave them their own nation. Like it was like, if I remember, is in the Middle East, it was desert, barren, had nothing except for abundant sunlight, which the machines harnessed for solar power, and then became an economic powerhouse and quickly became one of the most powerful nations on Earth. And humans couldn't. I'm retelling the tale of the Animatrix, but like I wonder if like the end of Westworld could be them having their own nation. Like who knows what happens? Like who knows whether they'll be able to outcompete with humans or what? But like, is that a good, satisfying place to end the series? That they've got a land of their own?
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't know. Like that's.
I mean, maybe Dolores comes to realize, look, Bernard's right. You can't dominate the world.
Right.
But what you can do is live in harmony with it.
Or let's start a moon base.
Yeah, let's give them a planet.
Westworld in space.
Do hosts need oxygen? That's the question.
I think that didn't we say they
breathe?
didn't, which is one of the big conundrums of how they all drowned.
Why did we say they didn't? I don't remember.
Something that it's some kind of Jonathan Nolan's being interviewed and he's talking about the fact that robots poop. They don't need oxygen. Like he was just rattling off facts about them, and he said they don't require oxygen, which might prove to be interesting later. The other thing there's so many things we forget to talk about because there's just so many fucking things to talk about, even in a 2-hour goddamn podcast, is Bernard has the ability to cause hosts to terminate themselves.
Yep.
So them all floating could be like, we're all thinking about how they can be died in a flash flood where he could just instantly command them all to snap their own necks. That's interesting.
Perhaps. I mean,
so why did he leave the one fucking one alive?
I don't know.
Maybe that drone wandered in later. Or maybe that drone was supposed to do something for day. I don't know. Yeah, I have no clue.
Maybe it has to do with the shifting timelines, even. I don't know.
Okay, this is a pretty crazy theory, but I just wanted to read it because we didn't have a lot of this. Is short on theorizing this week. I thought, Luke L, why is Elsie so well groomed after being given a couple protein bars in a bucket? I'm talking 0 dust, 0 grease, 0 grime, perfect hair and makeup. Very odd. Elsie seems weirdly okay about the state of the park. Bernard doesn't really explain what's going on until pretty late in the episode, and even then there's not a lot of wait, what from her? I get it, it's annoying to watch a character learn everything you as the audience already know, but nothing from her. She just rolls with it. She doesn't even attempt to freeze all motor functions on that drone or Delos. All I'm saying is that this would make sense to a person whose entire job is to say freeze motor functions whenever they're threatened, and they don't immediately. Hold on a second. Why am I getting a call from New York? Let me retake that sentence. All I'm saying that this would make sense that a person whose entire job is to say freeze motor functions when they're threatened, and they don't immediately jump to that response. Then he has some evidence. Bernard actually says, you can't hear me because I'm not with you right now, while Elsie's trying to open the door to Delos. What's he saying here? That he's further back in the room, that he's there, but he's not actually talking? Is a future Bernard remembering the time that he went into that room with Elsie and wished he hadn't? It's a puzzling line.
What is the theory here? It seems like it's just like
the fact that she's a robot, so when Bernard's saying you're not really, or I'm not really here with you right now, he's talking about her as much as him.
But what does this have to do with her looking unfazed by 3 days in the dirt or whatever? Like, hosts get grimy. Hosts get nasty looking.
But not to the extent like that a human would in the same conditions.
That doesn't seem very realistic to me then.
Well, like if she's just sitting in the cave and like she's not even moving until someone comes there. Like I don't want to fucking carry this theory.
I just don't know what the theory is. That Elsie's a host?
Yeah. The theory. Elsie is Bernard's version of consciousness. He uses her in as a Jiminy Cricket type. She doesn't trust him because she still thinks he's a killer. He views himself in much the same way. He doesn't know if he should trust himself. If you woke up knowing that you had just killed someone that you thought while you thought you were asleep, you'd have some pretty fucked inner thoughts. Essentially, that either Elsie is a host created for some unknown purpose by Ford, or Elsie is a manifestation of Bernard's consciousness because he killed Elsie, and it's a way for him to like repair his moral structures, I think. Because that's one of the models of consciousness is that, bicameral mind. She's like a literal representation of that.
Well, you weren't wrong when you said this is one of the crazier theories.
Right.
Look, here's...
I just wanted, because there was a lot of chatter about Elsie not looking like a human who has been locked in a cave for the better part of a day, maybe up to 3 days with protein bars in a bucket.
Sure.
That does seem, but on the other hand, it's also a very Hollywood thing to do.
Absolutely it is. What?
Like Dolores should be kind of filthy, riding all through hell and back everywhere.
She should be covered in dust.
Yeah.
Her clothes should be dark.
I know she doesn't sweat, but she's rubbed her face. She's had like she shouldn't have flawless hair and makeup after all the things. Just riding a horse full tilt would have fucked that up.
Yeah.
So I don't know that you can say, well, Elsie looks like she just stepped out of a fucking makeup chair for 45 minutes. There's no way she's not a host.
And I also don't want to have a discussion about how and why every single person on this show could be a host.
Fair enough.
That does not interest me. I feel like they've played that card. Mm-hmm. They've played the, hey, this person you thought was a human is actually a host card.
Right.
And if they're going to play it again, it's going to be in context of the control unit. It's not going to be in context of, hey, here's another person you thought was a human is actually a host.
I also don't think it'll be a season-wide arc. Because, even this, they could have done that with Jim Dalis. They knew that would be tedious.
Yeah.
I think you're wrong. I think they might play this one more time. It won't
But I think it'll be in the context of the control unit.
Okay.
Because that's the one they've set up now.
Right.
But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong, and it's valid to question every single person on this show every single week, but I don't want to do it.
Yeah, no,
I don't want to do it, man.
I think there is... I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying I think they can do it one more time. As long as there's a slight... You can say that, well, this might be ice cream, but it's strawberry, not vanilla now. Like a host switching bodies, Dolores riding around in Bernard or vice versa. Or I heard another one that said that that I really liked since last episode was that it's not Dolores in Bernard that washes up on the beach. It's Teddy. Because that's Dolores' way to sacrifice Teddy but still keep him around. Swap their brain cores. There's a lot of different things, but that's not... Oh, you thought a human is a host, it's a host in a different body. They can do that once. Yeah. They can do variations of that, but they can only do it once before it. So that's what I'm saying. I think there is still a big a host human swap, but it's going to be in a different way than just, oh, Bernard's actually Arnold.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking now. Anyway. All right, that's it. That's literally it for the episode. Westworld@baldmove.com is where you want to send all of those thoughts that you have for next week. You can also get on our forums.baldmove.com to discuss your theories with your fellow fans. Don't forget, every Sunday night, we have the Instant Talk podcast. Just a minute or two after the episode airs, we turn on the cameras, take to the microphones, we talk for 15-20 minutes about what we thought of the episode, and then we turn it over to you, the listener, to participate and send us feedback through YouTube's chat function. That is open only to club members. Club.baldmove.com if you want more information about that. There's a sale going on, yada, yada. That's all we got for this week. Until next week, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Jim.
See ya.